Bentornati, Serie A lovers, and welcome back to another Tactics Imperivm episode with me, Gian Lia, your host, a podcast powered by Serie A Spotlight, and we are going to deep dive into the biggest match of last weekend's match day of the Italian Serie A. Today, we are looking at Inter's statement win over Atalanta, a 2-0 victory that not only strengthened their position at the top, but also raised a big question. Is this Scudetto already theirs to lose? And we want you to let us know in the comments and across all social media platforms, what do you think about Inter's chances of retaining the Serie A title? Now, with Napoli struggling and Atalanta now 6 points adrift, Simone Inzaghi's side is all looking more and more like the team to beat. And let's be honest, the triplet dream is creeping into the minds of the Interisti right now. And also, this is a question to all the Nerazzurri fans listening to this episode and those who follow Serie A Spotlight across all social media to let us know whether the triplet is possible or not. Now, shifting back to the match against Atalanta, I know some people will say, oh, but Ederson's red card ruined the game. But, let's be real, Atalanta barely threatened Inter even before that. They finished the match with 16 shots, but only 0.64 expected goal, which for those of you new to the metric basically means they created 0 big chances. And we had already covered expected goal in the last 2 episodes, which included our review of Atalanta's big win against Juventus in Turin, where they outclassed and outsmarted Juventus, and they had a huge tail of expected goal, which means they dominated the game and created quality chances, especially inside the small area, which were really dangerous. And as you all know, whoever watched the match knew that the match could finish with a larger scoreline for Atalanta. Now, this was one of the worst attacking displays this season, at least statistically. Inter just suffocated them. Matteo Retegui was invisible, Ademola Lookman couldn't find space, and every time Atalanta tried to get going, basically they ran into a brick wall in blue and black. And speaking of that wall, one of the masterminds was Francesco Acerbi. Listen to these numbers: 9 clearances, 3 block shots, 3 interceptions, 5 aerial duels won, and 63 touches. Absolute rock. Atalanta couldn't break him down. Now let's talk about the setups of both teams. Starting with Inter, Inzaghi made a key call here. He started Benjamin Pavard as the right centre back in their 3-man defensive line, specifically to neutralize Lookman. And it worked. Lookman had a quiet night, and without his usual influence, although Atalanta attacked mostly down his flank, they struggled to create anything meaningful. On the flip side, Gasperini went with Mario Pasalic instead of Charles de Ketelaere. Now this was interesting because Pasalic isn't as aggressive going forward, and his main task was to man-mark Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and he did that job well. But here's the catch. That meant Alessandro Bastoni was left unmarked during Inter's build-up. And by unmarked, I mean that Atalanta had an idea of pressing him. The idea was having Raul Bellanova from his right wing back position to leave Carlos Augusto and run towards Bastoni. But given that his pressing was not always sharp and to the point, because it was not easy for him to leave his player and cover ground to catch Bastoni, this meant that Bastoni had plenty of time on the ball. And I think this was questioning from Atalanta's point of view. Let's not forget, Bastoni is one of the best ball-playing defenders in the Italian Serie A, but not only, in European football and in world football as well. Statistics prove that. He ended the game with 6 completed passes into the final third and a 73% long ball accuracy. Usually these are numbers produced by a midfielder, and here we're speaking about a left centre back. If you're letting him dictate play, basically you are asking for trouble. Now, heading into the final third of Inter, Thuram and Lautaro Are they Inter's perfect duo? No. One thing I really loved about Inter in this game was how the two move together. Their chemistry is unreal. It's almost telepathic at this point. Every time Inter had the ball, one would drop deep, dragging a defender out of position, while the other would dart into space behind. At times, even Nicolo Barella was exploiting the space, not just Lautaro or Thuram. And because Atalanta were so aggressive with their men marking, which means they practically have no defensive line, this movement ripped them apart. And here's the tactical goal. Since Inter's players were arriving from deeper positions, from behind Atalanta's defenders' shoulders, the Atalanta players were always a step behind. They couldn't cut out passes in time, and it gave Inter complete control in the final third. In fact, Inter created a handful of chances early in the game, with Thuram also coming close, but he was denied by the woodwork. Even though Inter didn't score from open play, this movement set the tone for how they managed Atalanta's press and kept them one step ahead all night. Now I wanted to take a look at Inter's first goal, the set piece, because a set pieces nowadays, they have become very important. Clubs have started to hire set pieces coaches, and I wanted to take a deep down look at Inter's first goal from a corner kick, which came after there was some medical issues happening in the sense. So clearly both teams were a bit cold at that time, but maybe Atalanta weren't really ready for that corner kick. I don't know. So basically there were 3 key points from this corner kick. Calhanoglu delivered an out-swinging corner. Now, by out-swinging we mean when the player is kicking the ball from inside to outside into the box. Previously, Inter's corners were in-swingers, and since through an in-swinger corner the trajectory of the ball is towards inside the goalkeeper, the Inter players were all inside Karnezacki's box. This time Inter stacked players inside the 6-yard box, staying outside of the goalkeeper's area. Carlos Augusto, the eventual scorer, started from deep, losing his marker before arriving at the perfect moment to meet up with Calhanoglu's ball and make it 1-0 for Inter. In this corner kick, Atalanta, they used a mixed marking system, meaning some players were zonal and others were man marking. So basically there are 3 types of marking during a set piece, usually a corner, but even a set piece, a free kick which is in close proximity to the final third, to the penalty area. So Atalanta basically use a mixed marking system, which is very common nowadays, which has the zonal marking where players are covering space awaiting for opponents to come in, or they are looking at the ball to make sure they clear the ball and anticipate any opponents. While the others were man marking, which obviously the name is self-explanatory, which means that the players were man marking in their players. Obviously then the man marking depends whether it is aggressive, whether it is passive, whether it is within one arm touching distance. Augusto's movement nonetheless caught them completely off guard. One quick step, one clean finish, and boom, 1-0 Inter. I think from that point on the game was done. Atalanta had no way back, especially after Ederson red card. Now, to be honest, when Charles de Ketelaere came on, Atalanta had a couple of moments where they could threaten Inter. But I think Inter at that point could control the game in a more comfortable way, and their experience and maturity came to the fore. And well, obviously when Inter scored their second, it was game over. So, here's my final thoughts. Is this Inter's Scudetto to lose? And where does this leave us? Inter are now leading Serie A and managing 3 competitions at once. I think they are not in the peak form right now. They have some injuries as well, especially De Marco, and now we have to wait and see about Dumfries, who picked up, it looks like, a hamstring injury as well, and that might be a little damaging to them. At the same time, Napoli and Atalanta still have time to fight, but let's be honest, Inter are in full control right now. And we at Serie A Spotlight, we want to know your thoughts. Is the title race over? And can Napoli or Atalanta mount a comeback? Let us know. And as always, make sure to follow Serie A Spotlight on all social media platforms and wherever you get your podcast. And as always, alla prossima.